Potsdam Declaration of 1945, which set out the Allied powers' terms for Japan's surrender, deprived Japan of all its overseas territories. Taiwan was a Japanese territory and was freed after World War II. The nearby Ryukyu Islands, that include the large island of Okinawa, were also a territory. The Japanese Empire had invaded in 1872 and imposed its language and culture. 1/3 of Okinawa's population was killed during the American invasion in 1945, yet it was not freed. The Treaty of San Francisco in 1951 granted these islands to the United States so the U.S. military could seize land to build a massive military base complex that displaced 250,000 Okinawans, almost half the population. The American Empire began planning for world domination before World War II. They knew that Okinawa would be an ideal location to dominate the Western Pacific region, as the U.S. Army clearly stated after the war.
A little over 100 years ago, Commodore Matthew E. Perry landed on Okinawa. He was so impressed with the strategic location of the island that upon his return he urged Congress to negotiate with the islanders in the hope that Okinawa might become a United States possession. At the time, Congress was uninterested. Now, a century later, Okinawa is a possession of the United States, ceded to us in the Japanese Peace Treaty. Furthermore, it is the only possession we hold in Asia. What your Army is accomplishing today on this island is vital to the defense of freedom in the Far East.
Okinawans never voted to join the American Empire, as dozens of U.S. military bases were constructed that fenced off 20% of their farmland. Some 50,000 American troops were stationed on this island that the U.S. military boasted was the keystone of the Pacific. Okinawans were angered by the noisy combat training areas, and after learning that American nuclear and chemical weapons were stored on Okinawa, while pollutants from the bases fouled nearby farmland. Thousands of young, bored American servicemen resulted in numerous robberies, assaults, rapes, and murders. Okinawans began to protest for independence and the closure of American bases. The U.S. military countered this movement by giving Okinawa back to Japan in 1972 with an understanding that the American bases would remain. This violated the 1945 Potsdam Mandate. China never agreed to this, nor signed the Treaty of San Francisco that thwarted Okinawan independence. The Soviet Union and several other World War II allies never officially accepted Japanese and American control of Okinawa. The American media often demonizes China for not respecting Japan's vast air defense zone and economic zone that extend from mainland Japan to Taiwan, but never report why. Over 28,000 U.S. military personnel and their 22,000 family members are stationed on Okinawa today, plus thousands of American civilians who work at these bases. The Department of Defense Okinawa School District runs 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, and 8 elementary schools. The Marines have dozens of camps and an air base at Fatima, pictured, where loud helicopters anger nearby residents. As a result, billions of dollars are being spent to relocate this airbase to another part of the island that has infuriated Okinawans even more. The U.S. Air Force maintains the large Kadena Air Base on the island, while the Army and Navy maintain small bases. Objections to the large U.S. military presence continues to grow. Okinawans refuse to accept a perpetual occupation by foreign troops. They need space for new housing and development, and want the land and beaches now reserved for the U.S. military. Persistent American saber-rattling with North Korea and China worry Okinawans, since the American bases are prime targets. These factors have worsened relations and resulted in frequent street protests as Okinawan governors demand some troops leave. Promises to close some bases never materialize, as American generals consider them American property. The irony is that closing or downsizing some of these bases would save the United States millions of dollars a year and shift thousands of jobs to the U.S. economy. Maintaining troops in Okinawa requires millions of dollars each year to rotate GIs on 3-year tours, which include shipping their children, pets, and household goods. Since local housing is extremely expensive, the U.S. military also spends millions of dollars for additional housing costs and locality pay. There would be no lost financial contributions from the Japanese government because it never pays the U.S. military a cent. The billions of dollars contributed each year go to Japanese citizens for land rent, some new construction, and local stimulus payments to placate Okinawan political leaders. The remainder are bogus contributions, like not charging Americans import taxes and sales taxes at their bases. Keeping American military families and aircraft based at Kadena on Okinawa is strategically foolish. China has hundreds of missiles and aircraft that can attack Okinawa within minutes. Okinawa is no longer the keystone of the Pacific, but the bullseye of the Pacific. The technologic and training advantage of American fighter aircraft cannot overcome the massive numerical superiority of the Chinese. A 2008 RAND study, linked below, evaluated such a conflict and concluded that even if the United States had weeks to triple its combat air power on Okinawa and Guam, China could easily destroy the bases and aircraft in Okinawa. And this based on China's air power in 2008. The United States maintained dozens of aircraft at Clark Field in the Philippines in 1941 to deter a Japanese attack. They provided an easy target for a surprise attack, and most aircraft were destroyed on the ground. The defense of the Philippines was poorly organized, as a key concern for American officers was the evacuation of military families. The same problem exists today. If war occurs with China, all aircraft in Okinawa would be quickly destroyed, leaving some 50,000 Americans stranded in a war zone that China may invade. From a military standpoint, it is far better to base ships, aircraft, and families far from the Asian mainland. There are 17,000 U.S. Marines based on Okinawa, but only 4,000 are combat troops. The training areas are small and mountainous, with no off-road access for vehicles. Deployed artillery batteries must travel to mainland Japan to fire their guns. Marines find the locals unfriendly, prices high, and hate the off-base curfews implemented to avoid incidents. As a result, Marines now deploy to excellent training areas in northern Australia. Marine Corps units can easily move to other U.S. military bases, but generals claim that their bases on Okinawa are essential for peace and stability in the Western Pacific. However, any war in the Pacific would consist of air and naval battles for a year until a victory emerged and began to amass ground forces and transport ships for an amphibious invasion. Should war break out, the 4,000 combat Marines on Okinawa are of little value in Asian conflicts involving millions of soldiers. The Marines should move elsewhere in the Pacific, while the Air Force moves its non-fighter aircraft to underutilized bases in Alaska, mainland Japan, Hawaii, or Guam. It would be best to remove all families and use Kadena as a forward operating base. This is how the U.S. Navy uses Kadena to maintain reconnaissance aircraft in the region, which are home-based in Hawaii and Washington State and deploy for several months. Military officers are resistant to change. Okinawa is a great duty station. The weather is nice, the beaches are beautiful, and the island is mostly crime-free. It's a great place for families and golf. In addition, many powerful Japanese and American corporations support the status quo from which they profit. These forces strongly oppose any change, despite the obvious financial, strategic, and political benefits. Okinawa belongs to Okinawans, and they want most bases closed.